Hey everyone, and welcome to the AnzenGuard podcast. I'm Michael Reynolds,
Hi, everyone.
and I'm here with the fantastic Laura Wilson.
It's great to be here.
So today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that's pretty important these days, and that's the world of VPN legality.
Yeah, VPNs are super interesting.
I mean, it's one of those things where like everyone kind of knows what they are, right?
You would think so.
But like when you actually start to think about the legality of it all, it's like, whoa, this is a lot more complicated than I thought.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
So just to kind of set the stage for anyone who maybe needs a little refresher,
Sure.
a VPN is basically like this secret tunnel for your internet traffic, right? It encrypts all the things that you're doing online, and it masks your real location.
Like a digital invisibility cloak.
Exactly. And people use them for a bunch of different reasons. Privacy,
Mhm.
security when you're on public Wi-Fi, or even to watch shows from other countries.
Oh yeah, the geo-blocking thing.
But here's the thing that I find so wild.
What's that? The legality of using a VPN is different everywhere you go.
Yeah, that's the part that tricks people up.
I mean, something as simple as like using a tool to protect your privacy would be pretty straightforward legally speaking, but it's not.
Not at all.
It's like this global patchwork of laws and restrictions, and it all depends on how each country views things like internet freedom.
Censorship, surveillance.
It's almost like this global tug of war, right? You've got governments trying to control information and then citizens wanting privacy and just like open access.
The battle for the future of the internet, really.
So to really understand this landscape, we need to start by looking at the places where VPNs are completely illegal.
Okay, so let's talk about the no-go zone.
Hit me with it.
Yeah.
Which countries are totally off limits for VPNs?
Well, the list might surprise you. We're talking about places like Belarus,
Oh, wow.
China, Iran, Iraq, North Korea, Oman, Turkmenistan, and sometimes even Uganda.
Wow. I knew China was strict, but I had no idea so many countries had completely banned VPNs.
Even more common than you think.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into some of these examples. What's the situation like in China? Because I've heard they're really cracking down on VPN use these days.
Yeah, China is a really interesting case because technically VPNs aren't completely illegal there, but there's a huge catch.
Okay, I'm sensing a but coming.
They have to be government approved.
Government approved. So basically like approved by the very people who want to control what you see online.
Exactly. And as you can imagine, these approved VPNs are basically wolves in sheep's clothing.
Meaning they're not really protecting your privacy at all.
Not really, no. They're probably logging all your data and happily complying with censorship laws, which totally defeats the purpose of using a VPN for privacy or accessing blocked content.
So it's like a fake VPN, a VPN in name only.
Pretty much. And on top of that, if you get caught using an unapproved VPN in China, the penalties can be really harsh.
Yikes. So it's definitely a use at your own risk situation, and that risk is pretty high. What about Turkmenistan? I remember reading that they have incredibly strict internet controls.
Turkmenistan is a whole other level. They actually make citizens swear on the Quran not to use VPNs.
Wow, that's intense. I mean, it's hard to imagine that kind of digital lockdown for those of us who are used to a more open internet.
Yeah, it's a very different reality. And then, of course, there's North Korea, which is basically in its own category.
Right, internet access is extremely limited there for most people, isn't it?
Extremely. They have what's called an intranet, which is like this heavily controlled internal network. Think of it as a walled garden, but for the internet. And VPNs are absolutely forbidden. So we've got these like no-go zones where VPNs are completely illegal, but I bet there are a lot of places where things are a bit more murky, right?
Oh, yeah. It's not always black and white. Even in countries where VPNs are technically legal, you often find all sorts of restrictions and catches.
Okay, now we're getting to the juicy stuff. Tell me more about these restrictions. What kind of hoop do people have to jump through?
Well, one common tactic is forcing VPN providers to register with the government. Sometimes they even require them to provide backdoor access to user data. Wait, so even if it's legal, it's not really private?
Not really. No, Russia is a good example of this. They allow VPNs, but they have to play by the government's rules, which means user privacy can be compromised.
So it's kind of like a false sense of security.
Exactly. Then you've got content filtering, where governments allow VPNs, but they block access to certain types of content that they deem inappropriate.
So you might be able to get around those geographical blocks, but you're still restricted in what you can actually see.
Precisely. This is common in countries like the UAE, Oman, and Egypt. They often block things like pornography or political dissent, anything that challenges the government's narrative.
It's like they're saying you can use the internet, but only within these carefully controlled boundaries. It's
Exactly.
wild.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole issue of data retention laws, right? I remember reading about India's new law that requires VPN providers to keep user data for like 5 years.
Yeah, that's a big one. And
Yeah.
it raises some serious privacy concerns.
I mean, it's like asking a librarian to keep a detailed log of every book you borrow.
Right. It's like, hey, we know you're using a VPN to protect your privacy, but we still want to keep tabs on everything you do.
So what happened when that law went into effect? Did VPN providers just like roll over and comply?
Well, actually, a lot of the reputable VPN providers basically said, look, we can't guarantee our users' privacy under these conditions. And they chose to shut down their physical servers in India rather than comply with those data retention rules.
Wow, so they basically pulled out of India entirely.
A lot of them did, but that doesn't mean that people in India can't use VPNs at all. Many providers still offer what are called virtual servers in India.
Okay, so what exactly is a virtual server? It sounds kind of like a digital magic trick.
It's pretty clever.
Yeah.
Basically, it means you can get an Indian IP address while actually being connected to a VPN server that's located outside of India in a country where those strict data retention laws don't apply.
Ah, so it's like a loophole.
Yeah.
You appear to be in India digitally, but your data is actually routed through a server in a different, more privacy-friendly location?
Exactly. It's a way for users in India to still access the benefits of a VPN while maintaining their privacy.
That's really interesting. But this all raises a really important question. If VPNs are designed to hide your activity, how do governments even enforce these bans or restrictions? It seems like catching someone using a VPN would be like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
It's definitely a challenge, but governments have developed some pretty sophisticated methods for detecting and blocking VPN traffic.
Okay, spill the beans. How do they do it?
Well, one of their tools is something called Deep Packet Inspection, or DPI. Imagine it like a digital detective that's carefully analyzing all the data packets that are slowing through the internet.
So it's not just looking at the surface, it's actually digging into the nuts and bolts of the data.
Exactly. And DPI can identify the unique patterns and signatures of VPN traffic, even if it's encrypted.
That's both impressive and kind of creepy. It's like someone reading your mail even though it's sealed in an envelope.
Yeah, it definitely raises some privacy concerns, but DPI isn't their only weapon. They can also just block access to VPN provider websites.
So if people can't even find or download VPNs, they can't use them? It's like cutting off the supply line.
Exactly. They can also pressure internet service providers, or ISPs, to block VPN traffic at the network level. It's like having a gatekeeper at the entrance to the internet, selectively allowing or denying access.
Wow, they're really pulling out all the stops. And I bet this is just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Oh, there's always more to the story. But that's a good place to stop for now.
All right, everyone, that wraps up part 1 of our deep dive into VPN legality around the world. We've uncovered some pretty surprising information about where VPNs are banned and the lengths that some governments go to in order to control internet access.
The story's not over yet.
In part 2, we're going to delve into the motivations behind these restrictions. Why are some governments so intent on clamping down on VPN use? We'll explore the arguments from all sides and try to make sense of this complex landscape. So stay tuned for part 2 coming soon.
See you there. Welcome back to the AnzenGuard podcast. We're picking up right where we left off, exploring the intricate world of VPN legality.
Last time we took a virtual trip around the globe, uncovering some surprising locations where VPNs are either totally banned or face some pretty strict limitations. But knowing where these restrictions exist isn't really enough, right? We need to understand the why.
Absolutely. Let's dive into those motivations. What's driving these restrictions? Why are some governments so keen on controlling VPN use?
I mean, from what we've seen so far, it seems like the desire for control plays a major role.
It definitely does. One of the primary reasons is censorship. Governments want to manage the information that their citizens can access. They want to influence the narratives that people encounter online.
They want to control the story.
Exactly. And VPNs, with their ability to bypass geoblocks and open up the whole internet, they kind of throw a wrench into those plans.
It's like trying to build a wall in a world where everyone suddenly has wings.
That's a great analogy. VPNs empower individuals to break free from those carefully constructed information bubbles and explore a wider range of perspectives and ideas.
But wouldn't some governments argue that censorship is necessary? Like for maintaining order or national security?
That's the argument they often make. They might say that they're protecting citizens from harmful content or preventing the spread of misinformation.
Okay, I can see that. But it seems like the line between protection and control can get pretty blurry.
It can. And it's easy for censorship to be used to silence dissent or to maintain a particular political narrative.
So it becomes a question of who gets to decide what's harmful or what's misleading.
Exactly. And that's a slippery slope for sure. Another major factor driving VPN restrictions is surveillance. A lot of governments are actively monitoring online activity, and they often justify it with national security concerns or crime prevention.
But if I'm using a VPN and it's encrypting my internet traffic, wouldn't that make surveillance a lot more difficult?
It definitely makes it more challenging, but that doesn't mean that governments have given up. They're constantly developing new methods to try to track online behavior, even when VPNs are involved. Remember those deep packet inspection techniques we talked about earlier?
Oh, right. The digital detective sniffing out VPN traffic.
Exactly. Plus, there's the whole data retention issue. Even if governments can't see what you're doing in real time, they might still be able to access your browsing history or other data if they can force VPN providers to log that information.
I see. And it's not just about monitoring what people are doing online, right? It's also about the valuable data that can be collected.
Absolutely. In today's data-driven world, information is power. Governments and corporations are increasingly interested in gathering as much data as possible about their citizens, and that includes their online behavior. VPNs, by their very nature, threaten that data collection effort.
It's like a privacy arms race. Governments trying to find ways to collect data and individuals seeking ways to protect it.
It really is, and the stakes are getting higher all the time. We've also seen cases where VPN restrictions are tied to economic interests. For example, in Uganda, the government tried to block VPNs after they introduced a social media tax.
Oh, wow. So people were using VPNs to avoid paying the tax, and the government saw that as a threat to their revenue?
Exactly. It's a reminder that VPNs can have real-world economic implications both for individuals and for governments.
It's not always just about privacy and security. Sometimes it's about money.
That's right. Some countries also argue that VPNs facilitate illegal activities that harm their economies, like copyright infringement or online gambling.
So they're framing VPNs as tools for criminals, even though most people are using them for perfectly legitimate reasons like privacy and security.
That's a common tactic. It allows governments to paint VPN users in a negative light and justify stricter regulations. But it's important to remember that a VPN is just a tool. It can be used for good or bad, just like any technology.
It's like a hammer. You can use it to build a house or you can use it to break a window. It's all about how it's used.
I like that analogy. It all comes down to intent and application.
So we've got censorship, surveillance, and economic interests at play. Are there any other less obvious factors that are contributing to VPN restrictions?
Yeah, there are a few other angles to consider. One is this idea of national sovereignty. Some governments argue that they have the right to control what happens within their digital borders, just like they control their physical borders.
That makes sense.
They view VPNs as a way to circumvent their laws and regulations, a challenge to their authority.
So it's like extending their jurisdiction into the online world.
Exactly. They want to maintain control even if it comes at the expense of individual freedoms. Another factor is the protection of intellectual property. Some countries argue that VPNs make it easier for people to pirate copyrighted content, which harms their creative industries.
So we've got the entertainment industry lobbying for stricter VPN controls.
They definitely have a voice in the conversation. They argue that VPNs make it harder to enforce copyright laws and protect their profits.
It's like a tug-of-war between free speech advocates, privacy advocates, government control, and the economic interests of these different industries.
It's a complex web of competing interests, for sure.
Okay, so we've explored the why behind these restrictions, but are there any signs that this trend might reverse? Will we see a future where VPNs are more widely accepted even in countries that currently restrict them?
It's hard to say for sure. The future of VPN legality is uncertain, and it will likely vary from country to country.
No crystal ball predictions.
Not this time. But we can look at some emerging trends that might offer some clues. For one, there's a growing awareness of online privacy and security. As more people become concerned about data breaches and online tracking, the demand for tools like VPNs is likely to increase.
Right. The more people value their privacy, the more they're going to seek out ways to protect it, even if governments try to make it harder.
Exactly. And that growing demand could actually put pressure on governments to reconsider their restrictive policies. It's like a market force pushing back against government control.
It's encouraging to think that individual choices can actually influence the legal landscape.
They definitely can. Another trend to consider is the rise of remote work and digital nomadism. As more people work and travel internationally, The need for secure and private internet access becomes even more important.
So VPNs become essential tools for doing business and staying connected in a globalized world.
They do. And that could lead to more businesses advocating for VPN-friendly policies, further shifting the balance.
It's interesting to think about how these technological and societal shifts might reshape the whole conversation around VPNs.
It's a dynamic landscape for sure,
Yeah.
but ultimately the future of VPN legality is going to depend on the balance of power between governments, corporations, and individuals.
And how effectively those individuals advocate for their right to privacy and internet freedom.
Exactly. It's a fight worth having.
That's a great note to end on. We've uncovered the driving forces behind VPN restrictions and explored some potential scenarios for the future. But we're not quite done yet.
In part 3, we'll get down to the practical stuff. What are the key features to look for in a VPN? How can you choose a provider that aligns with your specific privacy needs and your risk tolerance?
We'll equip you with the knowledge and insights you need to navigate this complex world and make informed decisions about your online security. Stay tuned for part 3, coming soon. Welcome back to the AnzenGuard podcast for the final part of our deep dive into the world of VPN legality.
We've come a long way.
We have. We've journeyed through this whole maze of restrictions, figured out the motivations behind them, explored the where and the why.
And now for the big question.
The how,
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So let's say I'm convinced, I get it, VPNs are important, but with so many options out there, how do I actually choose the right one for me?
Yeah, it can definitely feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
There are so many VPN providers out there, all claiming to be the fastest, the most secure, the best for streaming.
Right? Like I've tried to sort through all those marketing claims before, and it's enough to make your head spin.
So let's break it down. Let's focus on the features that truly matter. Well,
Yeah, sounds good.
first and foremost, the cornerstone of any good VPN is privacy.
Yeah, that makes sense. After all, protecting your online activity from prying eyes is kind of the whole point of using a VPN.
Right, so how can you be sure a VPN is actually delivering on that promise? The most crucial thing to look for is a strict no-logs policy.
Okay, so a no-logs policy, what does that actually mean?
It means the VPN provider doesn't keep records of your online activity. This includes the websites you visit, the files, you download your browsing history. It's like those spy movies where the agent destroys the evidence after a mission.
So even if someone demanded that data, the provider wouldn't have it to give.
Exactly. No data trail, no tracking. It's that simple.
But how can you be sure that a provider is actually sticking to their no-logs policy? I mean, they could just say that and still be collecting data in the background, right?
You're right. That's a valid concern. That's why it's so important to choose a provider that has undergone independent audits.
Independent audits.
Yeah. There are third-party organizations that specialize in verifying VPN's claims. Think of them as the Internet's fact-checkers.
Okay, so I should look for those audit reports or certifications as a sign that the provider is actually walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Precisely. Another key factor is the VPN's jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction.
This refers to the country where the company is based. It might seem like a minor detail, but it matters because it determines which laws and regulations the VPN provider is subject to.
So even if the VPN itself is doing a great job protecting my privacy, the government where the company is headquartered could still demand access to that data.
It's possible. That's why ideally you want to choose a provider that's based in a country with strong privacy laws and a history of respecting digital freedoms.
Okay, so privacy is the foundation, but what else should I be considering?
Security is another critical element. You want a VPN that uses robust encryption to protect your data as it travels across the internet. Think of it like putting your information in an unbreakable safe.
Got it. So even if someone manages to intercept my data, it's just gibberish without the encryption key.
Exactly. Look for a provider that uses AES 256 encryption. That's the gold standard, used by governments and militaries around the world.
All right, so we've got privacy and security. What about speed? I've heard that using a VPN can sometimes slow down your internet connection.
Yeah, that's a common concern. And it can be true if you choose a poorly designed VPN. But a good VPN will minimize that speed loss so you can browse, stream, and download without feeling like you're stuck in the slow lane.
So what should I look for to make sure I'm getting a speedy VPN experience?
A large network of servers in multiple locations is key. Think of it like having express lanes all over the world.
So more servers equals more options and faster speeds.
Generally, yes. It's also important to look for a provider that offers unlimited bandwidth. Some VPNs have data caps, which means they limit how much data you can use each month.
Yeah, that would be a deal breaker for me. I don't want to be constantly monitoring my data usage.
Right. You want the freedom to browse and stream without worrying about hitting your limit.
So we've covered privacy, security, speed, And bandwidth. Anything else I should keep in mind?
A few more things. Customer support is essential. If you ever encounter a problem with your VPN, you want to know that there's someone there to help. Look for a provider that offers 24/7 customer support, ideally through multiple channels like live chat and email.
It's like having a tech support hotline for your privacy.
Exactly. You want to be able to get help quickly and easily if something goes wrong. Another consideration is device compatibility. Make sure the VPN you choose works with all the devices you use: your computer, your phone, your tablet, even your smart TV.
Right. I don't want to have to juggle different VPNs for different devices. That would be a nightmare.
And finally, let's not forget about price. VPNs range from free to several dollars per month.
Yeah, we've talked about the potential pitfalls of free VPNs before. It's usually better to invest in a reputable paid service. I mean, peace of mind is worth a few bucks a month.
I agree. Consider it an investment in your online security and privacy.
Okay, so to recap, when I'm choosing a VPN, I should be focusing on privacy, security, speed, bandwidth, customer support device, compatibility, and price. Is there like a secret formula to finding the perfect VPN, or is it more of a personal journey?
There's no one-size-fits-all answer. The best VPN for you is going to depend on your individual needs and priorities. It's about doing your research, comparing features, and finding a provider that feels like a good fit.
So read those reviews, compare different providers, and think about which features are most important to you. It's kind of like finding the right pair of shoes. They need to fit your lifestyle.
I like that. It's about finding a VPN that empowers you to use the internet on your own terms with confidence and peace of mind.
Well, Laura, this deep dive has been eye-opening. I feel like I finally understand the world of VPNs, and I'm ready to choose one that aligns with my values.
That's great to hear. Remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to protecting your privacy and security online.
That wraps up our deep dive into the world of VPN legality. We hope this journey has equipped you with the knowledge and insights you need to make informed choices about your online security.
I'm Laura Wilson.
And I'm Michael Reynolds. Thanks for joining us here on the AnzenGuard podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode with your friends. Until next time, stay safe and informed online.